It was late October in upstate New York, the kind of town that barely shows up on a map. Ashwood, population just under 3,000. The trees around the town were all flame-colored, red and gold leaves drifting down every time the wind picked up. But everyone in Ashwood knew that once you crossed the highway and went down the old dirt road, there was a forest that no one entered after dark. They called it Hollow Pines. For years, kids dared each other to sneak in, but most only went a few steps before running back out, swearing they felt like someone was watching them. The stories about Hollow Pines had been passed around forever. Whispers about campers who disappeared, strange lights flickering between the trees, screams that carried through the woods at night. On Halloween weekend, 4 college friends decided the stories were nothing more than local ghost tales. They had come back to Ashwood from their universities. Ethan, the calm one who always tried to keep things rational. Maya, curious and drawn to the mysterious. Jordan, who laughed everything off. And Claire, who had grown up in Ashwood but swore she had never gone near the forest. That night, they parked Ethan's old Jeep near the dirt road and stood at the entrance of Hollow Pines. The moon was bright enough to see the skeletal shapes of trees stretching endlessly into the dark. The air was colder there, heavier somehow, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Maya grinned, pulling out her flashlight. Come on, it's just a bunch of trees. Let's prove the town wrong. But as soon as they stepped into the woods, the silence hit them. No crickets, no rustle of animals, just the crunch of dead leaves under their boots. The whispering thickened, overlapping voices that seemed to bleed through the air itself. Maya spun in a circle with her flashlight, but the light only caught glimpses of movement, shadows slipping between the trees, too fast to be human. "Stop messing with us!" Jordan shouted, his voice cracking. But even as he yelled, his own breath turned white in the air. The temperature had dropped suddenly, chilling them to the bone. Then, out of nowhere, the forest went dead silent again. And that's when Ethan saw it, just beyond the reach of his flashlight, standing perfectly still between the pines. A figure, tall, thin. Its skin looked pale, almost gray, its head tilted at an unnatural angle, watching them. "Do you see that?" Ethan whispered, his throat dry. Maya raised her light toward it, but the second the beam touched the figure, it was gone. Claire grabbed Ethan's arm, her nails digging into his jacket. "We need to leave." Now, they hurried forward, trying to find any sign of the dirt road, but the deeper they went, the more the forest seemed to bend against them. Trees that weren't there a moment ago blocked their path, and every direction looked the same. And then, without warning, Jordan screamed. The others spun around, his flashlight lay on the ground, its beam flickering across the leaves. But Jordan himself was gone. "Jordan!" Maya shouted, panic in her voice. She snatched up the flashlight, sweeping it wildly, but there was no trace of him, no footsteps, no broken branches, nothing. Just the faint sound of his scream echoing deeper into the forest before it cut off completely. They were 3 now, and the breathing had returned. Only this time, it was right behind them. The 3 of them spun around, flashlights trembling in their hands. For a split second, the beam caught it again, the figure. This time it was closer, so close they could see the hollow sockets where eyes should have been, the skin stretched thin across its skull, lips torn into something that almost looked like a smile. It exhaled, a long, rattling breath that seemed to shake the air. Maya screamed and swung her flashlight directly at it. And the thing moved. Not forward, not backward, but sideways, impossibly fast, almost like it was gliding between the trees. The light caught fragments of its body as it darted, elongated limbs, joints bending the wrong way, skin that looked cracked like dry earth. Claire backed up until her shoulder hit a tree. Her voice broke. "It's not letting us out." It's keeping us here." Ethan grabbed her hand and pulled her forward. "We keep moving." "Don't stop. Just move." They ran, the forest blurring around them, branches clawing at their clothes. Behind them, the sound of something huge crashing through the woods followed, always just a step behind, always breathing that ragged, inhuman breath. Suddenly, Maya's light fell on something ahead. An old wooden cabin, half collapsed, sitting in the middle of the trees. Its roof sagged, windows shattered, but it was the only structure they had seen in miles of endless forest. "Inside!" Ethan shouted. They burst through the door, slamming it behind them, gasping for air. The cabin smelled of rot and mold, the floor littered with broken glass and old furniture. But for the first time since they had entered Hollow Pines, the forest seemed quiet. Too quiet. Claire shivered. Her flashlight beam crawled across the walls and froze. Carved into every inch of the wood were the same symbols she had seen in the dirt. Circles and triangles scratched so deep into the planks that her light caught grooves filled with something dark. Dried. "Ethan," her voice cracked, "this isn't a safe place." This is where it started. Before Ethan could answer, they all heard it. 3 knocks on the cabin door. Slow, heavy, like something waiting to be let in. The 3 froze, staring at the door. Dust drifted down from the ceiling with every knock, each one heavier than the last. Maya's hands shook as she whispered, Don't open it." Ethan pressed his back against the wall, trying to steady his breathing. "We're not opening it. We wait. Maybe it'll go away." But then the knocking stopped. Silence stretched across the cabin, thick and suffocating. For a moment, the only sound was their own pounding hearts. Then Claire's flashlight flickered, dimmed, and lit up again, landing on something in the far corner of the cabin. At first, it looked like a pile of old blankets, but as her beam steadied, they saw bones. Piles of them, skulls, ribs, femurs, all stacked haphazardly, some still wrapped in scraps of clothing that looked decades old. "Oh my God," Claire covered her mouth, gagging. Maya's light swept higher, across the wall above the bones. Words were carved there, jagged and desperate. "Don't let it in." Her voice shook. Someone else was trapped here. They tried to warn us. Suddenly, the door rattled violently as if something was slamming against it over and over, harder each time. The wood creaked, threatening to split. The whole cabin shook with every blow. Ethan grabbed a broken chair leg from the floor, holding it like a weapon. If it gets in, we fight. We don't just wait to die. But Claire was staring at the symbols carved around them, her breathing quick and shallow. "No, don't you see? These markings, they weren't to keep it out. They were to trap it in," and as if answering her words, the knocking suddenly stopped again. Then, from inside the cabin, only a few feet away, came the sound of breathing. The sound of breathing filled the room, slow, heavy, rattling. But none of them were moving. None of them were making that sound. Maya spun her flashlight toward the corner opposite the pile of bones. At first, the light only caught splinters of wood and shadows. Then the beam slid upward, revealing a figure crouched against the wall, its limbs bent wrong, its head cocked too far to one side. It wasn't outside anymore, it was already inside with them. The thing's chest rose and fell with each sick, shuddering breath. Its skin looked even more stretched in the harsh flashlight glow, veins black as ink threading through its body. Its mouth opened slightly, jaw unhinging too wide, releasing a hiss that carried more like a whisper inside their heads than a sound in the air. Claire staggered backward, hitting the wall. "Oh God! Oh God!" Before Ethan could stop her, Maya lunged forward and swung her flashlight at the creature. The beam cracked across its face, yet instead of flinching, the thing simply snapped its head toward her, faster than thought. For a second, she swore she saw a dozen pale hands reaching out of its chest, grasping, clawing at the air. The creature lunged. Maya screamed as it rushed across the cabin, but Ethan shoved her aside and rammed the broken chair leg into its body. The wood splintered on impact, like stabbing stone. The thing shrieked, the sound shrill and layered, like hundreds of voices screaming through one throat. The walls of the cabin trembled. Symbols carved into the wood began to glow faintly, burning with a dull red light. The bones piled in the corner shifted, clattering as if something beneath them was moving. "Ethan!" Claire shouted, yanking him back. "The markings! They're not to keep it in. They're to feed it. This place. It's alive with it." The creature rose to its full height now, towering over them, stretching until its skull scraped the ceiling. Its hollow eyes locked onto each of them one by one, its smile widening as if it had been waiting for new blood. And then, the cabin door burst open, not from something outside breaking in, but from the forest itself pulling them out. The trees beyond were moving, twisting, reaching, almost like the forest was no longer just a place. It was part of the thing. The door splintered apart, and a violent gust of cold air sucked through the cabin, pulling dust, bones, and even their breath with it. Ethan grabbed Claire's arm, dragging her through the broken frame. Maya followed, clutching her dying flashlight. But the forest outside was no longer the same. The pines had bent inward, their branches arching like ribs of a cage. The dirt path twisted in impossible directions, leading nowhere but deeper into blackness. Behind them, the creature crawled out of the cabin on all fours, its limbs bending backward, its body jerking in unnatural angles. Every time it moved, the trees seemed to shift with it, as if the forest itself was following its command. "Run!" Ethan shouted, his voice cracking. They tore through the woods, branches tearing at their faces, roots clawing at their legs. The whispers returned, louder than ever, voices of children, women, men, all crying out, some pleading for help, others laughing in low, broken tones. Maya tripped over a root and fell hard, her flashlight flying into the leaves. Ethan and Claire spun back, grabbing her just as Shadow slid across the ground, reaching for her legs like hands. They hauled her up, running faster, their lungs burning. Up ahead, the trees broke just enough to reveal something glinting in the moonlight, Jordan's flashlight. It lay abandoned, still glowing weakly, half buried in the dirt. Claire froze, pointing. He might still be alive. But before Ethan could respond, a figure stepped into the beam. For a heart-stopping moment, it was Jordan, his familiar hoodie, his face pale but smiling. "Guys," he called softly, his voice distant, warped. "This way." Maya took a step forward. "Jordan?" Ethan yanked her back hard, his eyes widened. "That's not him." Because Jordan's smile stretched too wide, his head tilted at the same impossible angle as the creature's. His eyes were empty sockets. The false Jordan raised its arm, and the trees obeyed, branches snapping shut across the path like the bars of a cage. They were being herded, driven. The forest wasn't trying to confuse them anymore. It was leading them somewhere, and then they saw it. Through the trees, in the distance, a clearing opened, a perfect circle under the moonlight. At its center stood a massive stone altar covered in fresh symbols, pulsing faintly like veins under skin. Claire's voice broke into a whisper. It's a ritual ground. That thing has been feeding here for decades, behind them." The creature howled, a sound that shook the earth, and the forest drove them forward, straight toward the altar. The clearing was too bright under the full moon, as if the forest itself had stepped aside to expose them. The stone altar loomed in the center, taller than a man, its surface slick with something dark that glistened wet in the cold night air. The carvings etched into the stone weren't random. They pulsed faintly, alive, like veins carrying blood. The three of them staggered to a stop at the edge of the clearing, breathing hard. Their eyes scanned the altar, then the trees around them. That's when Claire froze. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Look." At the base of the altar, half buried in dirt and moss, lay dozens of belongings: torn backpacks, shoes, rusted jewelry, even a cracked phone with the screen still faintly glowing. Evidence of everyone who had vanished into Hollow Pines. Maya's hands shook as she reached for Ethan. We're not the first. We're just the next." The forest closed in tighter. The creature stepped into the clearing behind them, its body impossibly tall now, limbs dragging across the ground as it moved, its empty sockets fixed on them, and its smile widened until the skin of its face split at the corners. And then, the altar answered. The symbols across its surface burned red, and the air filled with a low, guttural hum that vibrated in their bones. The ground trembled as something beneath the altar began to stir. A massive shape shifted under the soil, groaning like the earth itself was alive. Ethan shouted over the sound, "It's not the altar feeding it. The altar is the thing. The forest, the creature, all of it. It's part of something bigger." As if responding, the altar split down the middle with a deafening crack, stone tearing apart like flesh. From within, a colossal hand, pale and veined, began clawing its way out. The creature that had stalked them was only a fragment, an echo of whatever ancient horror lay buried beneath Hollow Pines. Claire collapsed to her knees, sobbing. "We can't stop it. There's no way out." But Ethan's eyes locked onto the symbols glowing brighter across the ground. He realized something. The markings weren't just to feed it. They were also a cage that needed blood to stay sealed. Maya looked at him, terror dawning in her eyes. "You're saying one of us has to..." Before she could finish, the forest screamed, a sound like 1,000 voices shrieking together, and the colossal hand dragged itself higher, cracking the altar apart. They had seconds. One of them had to choose,